I'm very hungry. Give me more food, even my flesh. I'm very hungry. Give me more food.
Wind howled through the thick forest surrounding the village of Ekuru, carrying with it an eerie, unsettling chill. The villagers had learned to recognize that sound, a sign that something was wrong. It was the whisper of a warning. But no one knew what it truly meant until the day it came for Prince Dike. "You hear that?" a young servant, Ifeoma, whispered as she hurried past the open windows of the palace. Her companion, Chidi, paused for a moment, the familiar dread creeping into his bones. "It sounds like a spirit's voice," he muttered, almost to himself. Ifeoma shook her head. "Don't say such things. The prince is in a good mood today. He ate all the food we served, and no one has been punished yet." Chidi was not convinced. He had served the prince for years, and he knew the signs of a coming storm. But it wasn't the storm in the skies he feared, it was the storm that brewed in Prince Dike's heart. Inside the palace, Prince Dike sat on his golden throne, surrounded by a few loyal attendants. His posture was perfect, his clothes rich with embroidered patterns, and his face, usually stern, had a rare smirk on it. "More food," he commanded, slamming his fist on the armrest. His voice rang through the marble halls, demanding attention. "Yes, my prince," replied the servant, bowing deeply before hurrying away. His eyes flickered to the large feast laid before him. He had eaten earlier, yet his hunger could not be satisfied. His eyes swept over the spread of roasted meats, fish, yams, and fruits. Everything was his, and he took it all without hesitation. He could never get enough. "More," he ordered again, pushing the half-finished plate of yam aside as he reached for another dish. One of the servants, an elderly woman named Nina, hesitated at the edge of the hall. She had been in the prince's service for longer than she cared to admit, and her heart grew heavy each time she watched him devour food as if it were a conquest rather than nourishment. "Prince Dike," she began softly, stepping into the room. "You have eaten enough for today. You must rest now." His gaze shot up to her. "Enough? Enough of what?" "You don't understand, old woman. The world has plenty. Why should I be satisfied when I could have it all?" His voice was sharp, cruel. Nina winced but kept her composure. "The world is not just about taking. It is also about giving. Your father, King Obesai, taught us all this." Dike's face twisted in irritation. "My father is weak. He is content with what he has, content with his little kingdom. But I will have everything." His eyes gleamed with a dangerous intensity. Before Nina could respond, the palace doors suddenly creaked open. A figure stepped into the room, a man so tall that he seemed to fill the doorway completely. His features were hidden by the shadow cast from the outside light, but his presence was unmistakable. The air around him seemed to change, as if the very earth itself recognized him. Nina gasped. Who are you?" The man spoke in a low, calm voice, though there was something strange about it. "I come with a message for the prince." Dike's eyebrows furrowed. "A message? From whom?" The man stepped forward, his face finally coming into view. He appeared to be no older than 30, with deep, penetrating eyes and a slight smile that did not reach his lips. His clothes were simple, nothing like the finery of the palace, and yet he radiated an unsettling aura. "A warning," the man said, his voice almost a whisper. "A warning about your hunger." Dike's laugh echoed in the hall. "A warning? From a stranger who dares walk into my palace? What do you know of hunger?" "I have more than enough to fill my desires." The mysterious man didn't flinch. "You take and take, but you will never be satisfied. You will consume everything, until there is nothing left. But be warned, it is not only the food you will devour. There are consequences to such greed." Dike stood, his anger rising. I do not listen to fools. Leave now, before I have you thrown into the dungeon. The man's smile remained as he took a step back, his gaze never leaving the prince. I am no fool. But you will learn, prince. You will learn when the food rots in your mouth, when your desires consume you until there is nothing left. And with that, the man turned and walked out of the palace, leaving an uneasy silence in his wake. Nina stared after him, her heart heavy with foreboding. You should have listened, my prince, she murmured under her breath. But Dike was not worried. He was used to threats. He is nothing, Dike scoffed. He is a beggar, a wanderer. No one can challenge me. I am the prince of this land, and I will take whatever I want. For days after the stranger's visit, the air in the palace felt different. The servants whispered among themselves, speaking in hushed voices about the man who had appeared and vanished like mist. Some said he was a spirit in disguise, others believed he was a messenger of the gods. But Prince Dike, he laughed. Are my people so foolish? He scoffed one afternoon, lounging in his private chambers. His closest attendant stood by, waiting for his next command. A man in rags walks into my palace, speaks nonsense, and suddenly, the whole village is shaking in fear. His closest advisor, Obina, shifted uncomfortably. My prince, strange things have happened in this land before. It is said that spirits sometimes walk among men, giving warnings before great misfortune. Dike slammed his fist on the wooden table, causing the golden goblets to rattle. Enough. No spirit would dare come against me. If he was truly powerful, he would have struck me down where I stood. Obina fell silent. He had served Dike for years and knew better than to argue with him when he was in this mood. The prince had been growing more reckless in recent months, taking more than ever, spending without care, and punishing those who questioned him. Then, the first sign came. It started with the food. One evening, as the palace prepared another grand feast, the head cook, Mama Ozioma, came rushing into the main hall, her face pale. My prince, forgive me, she cried, falling to her knees. Something is wrong with the food. Dike frowned. What are you talking about? Mama Ozioma hesitated before motioning toward the long banquet table. The servants had just laid out the evening meal, roasted goat, fried plantains, steaming yam pottage. But something was off. A foul smell clung to the air, thick and putrid. Dike rose from his seat and stepped closer. His nose wrinkled. The food, which had been fresh just moments ago, was already rotting. The meat was turning green, the plantains covered in flies, and the yams oozed a dark, sticky liquid. The entire hall watched in stunned silence. This is witchcraft, one of the younger servants whispered. Dike's face darkened. Nonsense. He picked up a piece of meat, tearing off a chunk with his teeth. It tasted like death. His stomach twisted violently, and he spat it out, throwing the rest to the floor. Mama Ozioma and the servants exchanged nervous glances. My prince, she said slowly. This is a bad sign. Dike wiped his mouth, his hands shaking with anger. No, this is a trick. Someone is trying to embarrass me. His eyes darted around the room, as if expecting to find an enemy hiding in the shadows. But there was no enemy. Only the growing, inescapable stench of rot. The rotten food was just the beginning. In the days that followed, strange things began to happen in the palace. The water from the palace wells turned bitter, causing those who drank it to fall sick. Expensive fabrics in the royal chambers became moth-eaten overnight. A strong wind howled through the corridors at night, though no one could find its source. Servants whispered that the palace was cursed. Some even fled in the middle of the night, preferring hunger and poverty over the creeping dread that filled the air. But Prince Dike refused to listen. This is the work of jealous men, he told his council. There are those who envy my wealth and power, and they are trying to weaken me with fear. His closest advisor, Obina, cleared his throat. My prince, perhaps we should seek the wisdom of the elders. Dike's glare silenced him. Do you take me for a fool? The elders will tell me to give to the poor, to share my riches with beggars who have done nothing to earn them. I will not be weakened by pity. Obina bowed his head, knowing there was no point arguing. But even as Dike dismissed the warnings, the curse spread beyond the palace. In the village of Ekuru, the once fertile farmlands began to wither. Crops that had stood tall for generations suddenly failed to bear fruit. Goats and chickens dropped dead without explanation. Even the river, which had always been clear and fresh, now carried a strange, foul-smelling foam. People muttered among themselves. This all started after the prince sent the stranger away, an old woman said, shaking her head. He is taking too much, a farmer muttered. The land can no longer feed his greed. The village elders met in secret. We must speak to the prince, they agreed. If he does not change his ways, this land will die. But when they arrived at the palace, Dike laughed in their faces. Do you expect me to believe that my wealth is harming the land? He sneered. The gods favor me. If you are starving, it is because you are lazy. Work harder, and you will have enough. The elders left, shaking their heads. The people had come to warn the prince. Now, they could only wait for the curse to take its full form. One evening, as Dike sat alone in his chamber, sipping a goblet of palm wine, the candles flickered, though there was no wind. A shadow moved in the corner of the room. The prince's heart pounded. Who is there? A voice answered from the darkness. I told you that you would learn. Dike's breath caught in his throat. The stranger had returned. This time, the prince saw him clearly. He was exactly the same, his face calm, his clothes simple. But there was something different about his presence. The air around him was heavy, as though the walls of the room were pressing inward. Dike forced himself to stand tall. What trick is this? You are a fraud, nothing more. The stranger tilted his head slightly. And yet, your food rots, your people starve, and your kingdom crumbles. Dike clenched his fist. These are coincidences. You have no power over me. The stranger smiled, but there was no warmth in it. I do not need power over you. Your greed is enough to destroy you. The prince's face burned with anger. If you came to threaten me, you are wasting your time. Get out. The stranger did not move. I have only come to give you a final warning. A silence stretched between them. Then, the stranger spoke again, his voice low and steady. You will eat and eat until you have swallowed everything you love. And when there is nothing left, your hunger will turn upon you. Dike shivered despite himself. But he refused to show fear. I am not afraid of your riddles. The stranger turned, walking toward the door. Then we shall see how much more you can take before the taking destroys you. And with that, he was gone. Prince Dike's greed knew no bounds. At first, he raised the taxes little by little, believing the people would grumble but still pay. When they did, he saw no reason to stop. Every month, new levies were announced, taxes on grain, on livestock, on trade. Even the poorest farmers, who barely had enough to feed their families, were forced to give more. When some could no longer afford to pay, he sent his enforcers. They came in the dead of night, kicking down doors, dragging men into the streets. Some were beaten until their families surrendered the little food they had. Others were thrown into the palace dungeons, left to rot until their relatives could pay their debts. Still, it was not enough. Dike turned his gaze to the land. Ekuru's farmlands were vast and fertile, feeding the people for generations. But the prince wanted them for himself. He wanted hunting grounds where he could chase antelope and feast on wild game. So, it took them. Families who had farmed the same land for centuries woke up to find palace guards marking their boundaries with wooden stakes. This land belongs to the prince now, the guards announced. But where will we grow our food? The farmers pleaded. Not our concern, the guards replied. Leave, or be removed. Some tried to resist. A few brave men stood with their machetes, refusing to abandon their land. But they were no match for the prince's warriors. Those who fought were beaten. Those who protested were silenced. In a single season, the prince claimed acres upon acres of farmland. The crops were uprooted, the soil left bare. The land that once fed the people now served only one purpose, to entertain the prince's endless hunger. Even within the palace, no one was safe. Dike's greed was not limited to the outside world. Inside his own home, he became a tyrant. Servants who had once whispered and laughed among themselves now walked in silence, their heads bowed. The kitchen workers, who had once taken pride in preparing great feasts, now lived in terror. If a meal was not to the prince's liking, they risked a whipping. Even the royal council, men who had advised kings for decades, feared speaking freely. Anyone who dared suggest restraint was met with cold fury. You think I should stop? Dike once snapped at an elder. You think I should become weak? Give what is mine to beggars and fools. The elder lowered his gaze. My prince, I only. Dike's voice was ice. Get out. The elder hesitated. But. Out. From that day on, no one dared to question him. And so, the prince continued to take. And take. And take. Until there was nothing left. But the curse was watching. And it was coming for him. At first, it was subtle, a gnawing emptiness in his belly, no matter how much he ate. He dismissed it as nothing, convinced that he simply needed larger feasts. He ordered more cows to be slaughtered, more grains to be harvested, and more fish to be brought in from the river. But even after consuming mountains of food, the hunger remained. His body, once strong and proud, began to change. His cheeks hollowed, his eyes sank deep into his skull, and his once glowing skin lost its luster. Though he ate like a man possessed, he looked like one starving. His servants whispered behind his back. His stomach swells like a man full, yet his eyes look like a man dying of hunger, one muttered. He eats more in one day than the entire village eats in a week, another said. And still, he wastes away. The palace physicians were called, but they could find no cure. My prince, your body receives enough food, one of them said carefully. This hunger, it is not natural. Dike's rage exploded. Are you telling me I am cursed? The physician hesitated. I am saying, this is not of the flesh, but of the spirit. Dike's hands trembled. He had dismissed the warnings. Laughed at the stranger. Ignored the suffering of his people. But now, he could no longer deny that something was terribly, terribly wrong. He was eating himself to death. One night, in a desperate attempt to silence the hunger, Dike commanded the greatest feast ever seen in Ekuru. Hundreds of dishes were laid out before him: roasted antelope, steaming yam pottage, fresh palm wine, spiced snails, bowls of rice and beans, ripe mangoes, pineapples, and everything else the land could provide. His council sat at the long table, their faces tense. The elders had come, hoping to plead with him one last time. The palace servants stood along the walls, silent and afraid. But Dike didn't notice any of them. He ate. And ate. And ate. His fingers tore at the food like an animal. He swallowed without chewing, gulping down wine between mouthfuls, stuffing more into his mouth before even swallowing what was already there. Grease dripped down his chin. His stomach swelled unnaturally, but the hunger only grew fiercer. The elders watched in horror. My prince, one of them spoke softly. Please, stop. Dike's eyes snapped up, wild and bloodshot. Stop. He let out a ragged laugh. You think I do this by choice? I must eat. The hunger, it never ends. His voice cracked with desperation. His hands trembled as he grabbed another piece of meat, stuffing it into his mouth. But something was different now. The food no longer had taste. The wine turned to dust on his tongue. The more he ate, the less he felt. And then, the food began to change. He reached for a piece of roasted meat, only to find raw, rotting flesh in his hands. A bowl of rice transformed into a pile of maggots. The fresh fruit melted into black sludge before his eyes. Dike choked, spitting out the decayed food. He gasped, looking around wildly. The whole blurred. The faces of his council stretched and distorted. The torches flickered, casting monstrous shadows against the walls. And then, across the room, he saw him. The stranger. Standing by the doorway, watching. Dike's breath came in ragged gasps. His heart pounded. He wanted to scream, to command the guards to seize the man, but his tongue felt heavy, useless in his mouth. The stranger took a step forward. It is time, he said. Dike staggered back, shaking his head. No. No, I am a prince. His words died as pain exploded in his belly. A hunger unlike anything before. A hunger that clawed at his insides, demanding more. The hunger was no longer just in his stomach. It was in his blood. His bones. His mind. Dike's vision darkened. His hands reached blindly for food, but there was nothing left. He had eaten everything. Everything except his own flesh. The palace doors burst open as the guards and servants rushed in, drawn by the terrible screams echoing through the hall. They stopped dead in their tracks. Prince Dike sat on the ground, his rich robes soaked in blood. His hands, covered in deep, raw wounds, clawed at his own skin. His teeth, broken and red, had bitten into his own arms. Flesh hung from his lips. And still, he chewed. He sobbed as he ate. The hunger would not stop. His body convulsed, but he kept going, biting, tearing, swallowing. One by one, his council and the elders turned away in horror. The bravest of them stepped forward, trying to stop him, but it was already too late. By the time the first rays of morning light touched the palace walls, Prince Dike was gone. Nothing remained of him except a pile of bloody bones. When word of the prince's death spread, the people of Ekuru did not celebrate. They did not dance or cheer. Instead, they mourned. Not for Dike, but for what he had become. The elders gathered in the village square. The land has taken back what was stolen, they said. Balance has been restored. And it was true. The river cleared. The farmlands grew green again. The animals returned. The famine ended. But no one ever forgot the lesson. Greed is a hunger that cannot be satisfied. And those who take without giving will one day find themselves devoured by their own desires.